Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, how you doing, folks? Welcome to another episode of Tell the Damn Story. I'm solo today because Chris is juggling more plates, more flaming bowling pins, right, than we can count. And so I'm taking this one on solo. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to write with hope and not feel like a total fool. Actually, I do want to talk to you about writing with hope. And I do also want to talk to you about the fact that I understand that some might not think that's too cool because, no, I got to make sure the world knows that I'm savvy, that I'm aware of this problem and this corruption and this, this nutcase with the finger on the button and all that kind. Yeah, we believe me, we are completely aware of all the doom and gloom and all the negativity that is out there, that is perpetually spoon-fed to us 24/7 via the media and maybe our next door neighbors. But that is not the only thing going on this planet. If it were, this would be a ball of ash right now. There are plenty of good stories. There are plenty of people doing good things for a lot of people. They don't know people that are their neighbors, people who are less fortunate. There's plenty of that, but we don't see a lot of it because it's not the thing. They talk about trending sometimes. And, like anything else in media and advertising and communication and entertainment, what's hot? So right now, what's hot is, oh God, this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad. And how do we survive that? Well, one way is we write with hope, but we also write about hope. And that's what we're going to talk about. So why is optimism not naivete? You're not naive, you're not bizarre, you're not clueless, you're not rolling around with your head buried in the sand. And I'm not talking happy endings here. I'm talking about, why do we write when the world's in chaos? Why do stories matter in dark times? What's the responsibility of writers? I mean, what are we responsible for? I'll give you one quick, for instance, especially during the 60s, 70s, even into the early 80s, a lot of what I would hear about being a Black writer, being an African American, is that it is my obligation to write only about Black matters, Black characters, Black this, Black that. And I don't have a problem with Black people writing about Black people. I have a problem with it being stated that's the only thing we can write. Because prior to that, Caucasians or the status quo was we were only called on when there was going to be a Black character in the story or a Black theme. Otherwise, we couldn't because, hey, what do we know? What do we know about this or that, other lifestyles? And my attitude about that was, okay, you guys, white men have been writing about other cultures, other races, women. I'm going to assume that a majority of you are not women. You're not Asian, you're not Middle Eastern, you're not European, you're born and raised in cornbread America, but you were writing about something. You hadn't traveled in space, but you were writing about that. You hadn't studied at NASA, but you were writing about that. So why limit the scope of a creative's reach? Didn't make sense to me. As a Black person, yes, there's certain things I'm going to see through that lens. And there are other things I'm going to see through that lens, my feelings, blah, 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 as an individual. So then it's on me to do my best, to do my homework, to turn out the best kind of stories I can as a writer, as an actor, whatever. So once again, we look at why. Why should we, as writers, what are we responsible for? What are we only supposed to write about the heavy things, the dark things, the terrible things, the apocalyptic things? Why write with hope? Why write about hope? Chris is always saying that I like to slip into my Wayback Machine, my time machine, and remember and reference old films and TV shows and cartoon shows and things like that. And I do. I love doing that stuff. Some of it was even before my time, if you can imagine that. But I find a purpose in that because there's that old saying about, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. But also, there's a lot to learn from history, from reflecting, not staying stuck in the past, but using that as information to build on. So, during the Depression, a lot of musicals were produced. I mean, really, how many of us go around, having a meaningful conversation with somebody, maybe someone we love, someone we're having a difficult time with, and we start to express ourselves through song in a restaurant, in a library, in a park. And suddenly we're doing dance routines and everybody around us knows the song and knows the dance routine. It's not real life, but it's a distraction. It's a way of looking at a bigger problem through a friendly and acceptable lens. Or maybe even distracting us from that bigger problem by bringing us back to more universal problems, things that can be solved with a kind word or a different action or a hug or a kiss or maybe just a moment of reflection and going, yeah, you know what? It is good to be alive. It is good to be here. As a teacher, and I know Chris would say the same thing. I know Chris in his 30 years in teaching in high schools. All right. When you're when you're teaching the creative arts, when you're creating an environment in which people are going to express themselves, maybe thoughts that they've had for the longest time and have not shared with anybody, or maybe an experience that they've had that they want to sort of work it out or talk it out or write it out. And they don't quite know how it's going to sound to anybody. And so they choke, they hold it back because they don't want to be embarrassed, they don't want to be judged, they don't want to be called stupid or whatever, right? At that time, as a teacher, as an artist, you want to create what's called a safe space, a space where people can come and know, yeah, you can be you here. You can share your questions and share some of your thoughts and your ideas. You can express those things here. It's safe. We're not going to ridicule you. We're not going to come down on you. If it's something we can all work with, great. And if it's not, maybe we'll share some insight, or maybe we'll say, well, can you shift it this way or that way? But you create an environment where you do not have to worry about being tied to the stake and burned, metaphorically speaking. That safe space allows you then to imagine all kinds of possibilities too. What if we did this, that, or that? Or what if you saw it this way? Or what if we tried that? Or what if it was a dog instead of a robot? And it allows you to just play creatively because it's safe. It's okay. We're all here for the same reason. And when we have that kind of energy, that kind of passion, that kind of excitement, that kind of discovery, that kind of love for what we're doing, and we take those kind of risks and we feel supported, that energy is translated into the story. And that excitement and that fun. Maybe the director and the actors weren't there when we created it, but now they see it. It's yelling at them from the page. It's radiating from the page, and it inspires the director, and then he or she inspires the actors, and then the actors inspire this, and it all just mixes beautifully into this creative smoothie, if you want to look at it that way, or a great home and hearth stew. And good can win over evil, and things can be learned, and people can be forgiven. And if that's possible in real life, and we hear enough about it, then during those difficult times, during those ugly times, it gives us a little bit of hope that we're going to make it through this and we're going to come out the other end. And that we too can be as giving and forgiving and loving and creative, and we can do better than just survive. We can thrive. We can enjoy. We can hold precious the moments with our children or with our significant others or with our pets. We can find travel to be exciting, to understand that there are different places with different cultures and different mindsets and different lifestyles. And that might actually be fascinating or funny. So we can tell these stories to help keep people's minds opened to the infinite possibilities. Tell the damn story. Okay. As writers, we can tell the story. As composers, we can tell the stories. As dancers, we can choreograph and tell the stories. As painters and filmmakers, we can tell the story. This is always about that. We can focus on writing a lot because Chris and I are writers, but we've also been actors and voiceover talents and teachers. We've shared and discovered and shared and discovered for years. And so we will ask certain questions that maybe will stimulate something in the other creatives, in the creatives that are coming to us for some sort of insight, but also in other creatives who, are working on their projects, and we're just coming together and combining and tossing around ideas to see where that takes us. And we have the right to hope that this communal exchanging will allow us to see other possibilities. Certain core questions like, does your story offer despair or direction? Can conflict coexist with cynicism? I mean, we've got a lot of cynicism. Try saying that 6 times. Right. We have a lot of cynical stories. We have a lot of doom and gloom stories. We have a lot of stories of great tragedy and then sort of a brooding, open-ended ending. Yes, this terrible thing happened. And what does the future hold? Well, yeah, that's true. Right now, in particular, the future looks pretty tricky, pretty intense. It's not, though, like we haven't been here before. On this scale, yes, it's different. With computers and AI and the technology that's available, boy, it's different. But we're still the same meat sacks that we've always been. It's odd how we forget we are human. And as humans, there is good and there's bad in us. And again, as writers, as creatives, there's despair and there's hope. There's love and there's hate. There's joy and there's sorrow. There's curiosity and great knowledge. There's so many levels and sub levels and subtle levels to all of the experiences that we're having. And as storytellers, that's what our job is, to observe those things, to live those things, and then to go into ourselves and find a way to express them and share them, and in particular, to reveal the universal connections between us as human beings. It is why in a movie theater, 200 people can watch the same film and many of them be affected in the same way because there's some universal truths in there, some universal moments. We can recognize something in there that connects us to the characters and to the story. And so if we can feel that, and if we can connect to these characters and sort of even live vicariously through some of those actions, why can't we do stories that offer hope? Not saying don't do any other kind of stories. I'm saying why not stories that offer hope? Is our reacting to a small creature living in a desolate area of ruin and despair, trying to eke out some existence alone and almost forgotten? Can that story affect us any more deeply if we're looking at people of another culture, men or women, children, or a CGI generated robot? Lady and the Tramp is one of my favorite animation films. It's about dogs, but it's about love, and communication and making mistakes and redemption and finding joy and peace and people coming together for the greater good. It's all drawn. It's two-dimensional stuff. Wally is ones and zeros. The Incredibles, ones and zeros. But it taps into the human experience. And by the end of those films, you feel good. You feel there's hope. And what's wrong with feeling that? What's wrong with creating that? I'm going to sort of bring this to a close because I promised it wasn't going to be a long thing today. You know, again, without Chris there, what's the fun, right? But I'm going to go back to the beginning where I was talking about a safe space. And I'm going to say that one of the blessings in my life is I get to work with young students from all over the world and to help them become better writers, to help them find that in themselves and to turn out stories that they really want to tell and explore, themes they want to explore. And I was thoroughly blessed by a young person. There's been a few who've done this, but a young person who told me how important it was that they had this safe space, that they felt accepted and seen enough to try some things creatively. Now, again, you might be saying, yeah, but it wasn't like they're running across a battlefield. They were running across a human societal battlefield. If you feel alone and if you feel you're the odd person out, or if you're not quite sure which route you're going to take as you travel through life, you don't know what to do, and you feel there's this one place where you can kind of reach out and ask and test and be fully you. Yeah, that's important. And I'm honored that this person felt that. And I'm touched by every other person who's ever said that or that the people in the class have had that opportunity. And I know because Chris has spoken about it too. And I've seen some of his students from years gone by come back and share their joys and their accomplishments. So sharing hope, sharing the reality that good things are possible. Not only does it make a person feel better, but it also allows them to then project their goals into the future to say, okay, if I can make it to 22 to 25 to 35, if I can have a family, if I can have loved ones, if I can go out there into the world and make a place for myself, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And they go for it. And that's important. So as writers, again, mapping out those possibilities, telling those tales, even telling the tales of some of them that didn't work, we can learn from that. So that's a safe place. That's validating the desire to tell hopeful stories. And then the other thing I'll say is stories are a way of asking and testing and discovering what we as individuals believe in. I mean, what's worth building, what is worth fighting for. It's a way of for us to explore our possibilities. And also sharing the knowledge of life and lives that are different from our own. That's another way of broadening our perception of the world that we have. And again, now with technology and everything, and we talk about technology from the negative, but with technology that shows us the far corners of the world, from the stars in the sky to, I mean, levels deep below the ocean that we had never seen before. With all of that knowledge being available to us, Myopic thinking isn't very helpful or useful. So again, great science fiction now becomes science fact, but there's still more science fiction to tell. And through those stories, there's societal statements that can be made, stories about hope, but stories about building, about persistence, about tenacity, about strength, about right and wrong, about learning and growing, about collaboration and community, about diversity. Yeah, I know some people find that to be an ugly word. I don't. One last thing I'll also say, many of my clients um, are women, and it is really wonderful to be able to say to them that in my lifetime, I've watched the societal status of women, the barriers break down. I've watched it go from you're the helpless victim who needs to be rescued to get the hell out of her way. Stories. Stories about the trials and tribulations, about the need to fight for the right to vote and all those other things. Stories about women who invented things and discovered things. All of those stories help build a platform, help say there is a possibility, there is hope for you and a greater future. Male, female, black, white, young, old, different worlds, different cultures, different beliefs. There's hope. So I would say, in closing, that how to write with hope and how to write about hope is definitely a tool you should add to your creative belt. And don't feel that if you do that, if you do write hopeful stories, that people will consider you naive. Don't give a flying fish about that. Because there are ways you can tell the hard truth and still write about hope, or give hope, or share hope, the possibilities of hope. And as long as we have hope, there's more than enough reason for us to continue to do better. And you to continue to go out there and tell your own damn stories. Next week, Chris and I will be back full force. Be with us then.